one way or another. We will find out the stories of these students' lives and what's causing many of the problems they have and how they're attempting to remediate them. One of the things that we talk about in this book is everything that it takes to develop a child to the highest potential. Basically, that's what we're trying to do in special education, any education. We are trying to develop a student to achieve the highest level that student can achieve. And with a lot of these children that are having learning problems, are having behavior problems, we need to give those children our utmost with expectation. We need to let them know that we feel they have potential. One of the big things in this book is that we should have great expectations of all students. We shouldn't listen to what people have to say about them as far as people's judgment of an individual child. I grant you, psychologists and people like that, those are the people you should listen to. But your basic person on the street will look at a child, look at a student, look at an individual, and probably not think too deeply about what they're saying when they make some comment about that person's behavior and whether they really want to associate with that person or not. Many times, children are acting out to get attention. Many times, children are not receiving attention from areas outside of school, positive attention. Almost all kids that I have ever worked with, and that's been quite a few, have wanted positive attention. I think one of the saddest things is the fact that our rules and regulations now indicate that we should not touch children. There are a lot of these younger children in elementary school who crave a hug, who want somebody to give a positive pat and bring up their self-concept. So many of these children have such a low level of self-esteem. They've been told over and over that they can't do things, and unfortunately a lot of them are being told that they're no good. And many of them come into school with this attitude. If I can't do it, and if I'm no good, why should I try? This is why so many children act out, because they're wanting you to notice them, and they don't really care what they do, so they're noticed. And one of the things that we need to do is to try to get these children to understand the correct and proper way to behave in society. Many of them have what we call learning disabilities. It takes them longer to assimilate educational information than other people. Just yesterday I was talking to a nurse at a medical clinic, and she found out where I was teaching, and she said, oh, if you need a testimony, she said, I'll write one. She said, I am all for special education. And I did not know this lady. That she has a boy who will be graduating this year. She said, without special education, this boy probably would not have been able to make it through high school. He needed to go to high school, but he was having so much difficulty in learning. She said she had two daughters who could study for 15 minutes, go to school, get an A. 2 hours, and if he got a C, he was very fortunate. And, of course, this gives you a little situation where you have sibling rivalry, and this did not make him feel good. But she said with the special education classes that this child had, he had formed a positive attitude. He was going to graduate. He was feeling proud of what he could do. It was not up to the level of his district. It was not up to the level of a lot of people. But he was a success on his own level, and he was feeling positive about it. And I think that's what we should be striving to do and thinking about when we get into the education field. Because there are more and more children today that need this type of help. In here, we're going to find out how we can do that. One of the things we're going to strive for is to educate each child in the school system so that they can give a positive contribution to their school and to their community. Mrs. Clinton wrote a book a while back that has made the news all over the place. It takes a village to make a child, which is true. When we're thinking about our special education, we're thinking about collaboration. Okay, collaboration is the system of everybody working together to gain a goal. In this situation, we need the family to work together in a positive way. First of all, we need the student, we need the child. We need the family. We need the education system. We need the citizens of the community, neighbors, friends, area organizations, and the entire area that child is going to be in needs to be a contributing force to the development of that child. It used to be that the community was active in raising children. Before our communities grew so large, well, even now, the large communities, neighborhoods do this. When children are having difficulty acting out, for a good part of the time, people who are familiar with those children, neighbors, family, whatever, go to some length to turn that child into a positive person and help them understand the correct way to function. One of the things we have to do with these children is to give them choices. So many children are brought up by dogmatic instructions saying, you will do it this way. Well, sometimes that is not the way the child wants to, sometimes it's the best way. But a good way to help these kids is give them a choice. Would you rather do it this way or this way? Not would you rather do it or not do it. But let them make a choice. Let them be a positive force in what they do. Let them make their decisions. And this will be a help. Each child, somewhere in that little body, has inherent strength of some kind. I think back on one of the special education students I had a number of years ago. Norman was a fourth grade student. He was very, very large for his age. In fact, he came to school one day and said, Mrs. Rosenquist, these are my dad's pants and these are my dad's shoes. And Dad was not a small fellow. And Norman was eager, but it just took him so long to do the academic work. He had so much difficulty remembering facts, reading correctly, remembering what he had read. At this time, my special education room was on the lower level of the school, and so you had to come down about 5 or 6 steps, and my classroom was at the bottom of that. One day, Norman was coming down the steps into the room, and there were some older grade students going up from a gym class, and a couple of the boys were so special education. That's where all the dummies are. And so I asked them, I said, well, maybe you need special education because special education is learning respect for other people. I said, some people have difficulty with learning academic subjects. But can you boys take a tractor engine apart and put it back together? Norman and his dad do it all the time. Can you boys make a sand casting? It's a beautiful work of art for someone to appreciate. Norman can. Norman has a little bit of difficulty remembering his arithmetic facts and doing his reading. But some of these things that are worthwhile life skills, like mechanical things, he can do that pretty well. So I think maybe those boys had a little different understanding of the concept of special education. And one of the things we need to strive for with our special education students is allowing those children to grow to a point where they will be allowed full citizenship in whatever place they are living. They should not have to be shuttled and ignored and downtrodden. That's why many of our special education laws are passed, to assure that we have these things for the children. I think the first thing I'm going to do at this point in time, I'm going to have you number off. We will have, as one of our activities, reading of articles in professional journals, and somebody asked me yesterday if you could get information from the internet, and I said as long as the article is published, and I'm going to divide you into groups, and this will be group work. There will be 4 people in each group, and I'm going to, after I get you divided into the groups, I'm going to ask that your group sits together as you come to class, because when we have group presentations, I want the group to be able to work as a unit. There will be, each time we have a report on an article from a group, there will be a reporter, someone who does the verbal reporting, and a recorder, someone who records what has been said and the facts about this. The group will hand in the article, and the report will be given orally. When the oral report is given, it will be judged on presentation, clarity, and I will hand out information about the articles and the ways that you should report on them. Each of the articles should be from a journal or a publication no less than 3 years old. This way we are staying current with the trends that are going with special education at this point in time. There will be 5 points awarded to each group for each article, journal article. The summary will be 1 point. The statement of what you feel the author's purpose is will be 1 point. And your reaction to the article will be 3 points. And I will pass these papers out. These give an overview of these group activities. Just take one and pass them down. When you are presenting a group activity, your evaluation will be, did you speak clearly? Did you speak so everybody could hear? I hope I am speaking so everybody can hear. Did you look at the audience? Make eye contact with people you're talking to. Did you talk naturally or in a stilted form? Did you seem to know what you were talking about, know the topic well? Did you give factual information about that article? And did you use any outside aids to enhance your presentation? we are coming from the things that we are interested in finding out. Yes? 3 and 4. Okay. Did you look at the audience? And did you talk naturally? We are going to, I'm going to hand out some articles. Our first attempt at doing some article summary is the telethon mentality. I'm going to hand these out for you to study for next time. And when we come back next time, I want your reaction to the telethon mentality. I'll just hand these out. This article is written about a telethon that I think we're probably all fairly familiar with. How many of you have ever watched part of the Jerry Lewis telethon, the Labor Day telethon? Okay, there is one part of the article tells what the average person possibly sees on this and how they assimilate it. The other part is entitled Telethon Reality, and it kind of brings us a little bit better down to earth. On the last page of this article, the printing did not all get printed correctly. However, I think you can figure out from the context of the paragraph what they are saying. And we will discuss this together. We will talk about this together. So I want you to take this and read it, and I want your opinion of what you think about it. And if you have nothing else to do on Labor Day, why, you can check out the telethon. It's on for quite a while. But there are a lot of things that people criticize about the telethon. However, it does bring in a lot of money to fight the problem of muscular dystrophy. And this is what it's all about. We need to have a lot of money to do research, to find ways to combat a lot of these problems. And your other part of the assignment for our next meeting is Chapter 1. Excuse me, I lost my volume. Chapter 1 in our text. Does everybody have a textbook? Okay, I think they have them over at the bookstore. And Exceptional Lives. The chapters are very interesting. They're written in an interesting way. As I say, they have vignettes of the lives of students who are classified, quote, as special education students, exceptional children, and their families. The names are not accurate. They are using fictitious names. But the situations are accurate. And then we have different considerations, multicultural considerations. Our nation is made up of many races and many concepts. So we have some tables that are dealing with our cultural groups in the United States and indicating the prevalence of that cultural group, and we have some charts, some graphs and things indicating the prevalence of special needs for individuals in each of these groups. So find out about these different, there are 5 And I think some of the things you read in this chapter may surprise you a little bit. And there's some positive things about a lot of the problems the children are having. And we have lists of a lot of challenges that we have for students today. And over here on page 11, it's giving a chart of where we are now in the things that we're doing as far as special education and educating children with exceptionalities. It gives projections for the future, where we want to be, where we hope to be. When you stop to think about what has come down the pike in the last number of years, it has been wonderful as far as children with exceptionalities is concerned. It's not been too long ago that anyone who had a child who was a little bit different didn't let them go out in society, kept them home. These children were denied the opportunity to learn to live in society because they were being so well protected by their parents. Many of the times that protection was not necessarily for the child, but because the parent was embarrassed for having a child that was a little bit different from somebody else. We've made many, many strides since that time. We have found that there are inherent strengths in everyone. There are many situations for children and individuals that cause an exceptionality through accident or injury. There are many young people who are injured for one reason or another, one way or another. People who use controlled substances impair their mental condition, impair their reasoning condition, their understanding. These are all people that need help. Not judgment or exclusion unless they do something that is really inherently wrong and break laws. Then, for their protection and the protection of others, they're often excluded. But many of these people have the feeling that they are so different that people don't want to have anything to do with them. And that's one thing that we want to erase and change. Give these people a positive attitude. I think one of the best examples of this I can think of is in my own family, per se. A young man was in school here in the early 70s, late 60s. Was a terrific wrestler, great athlete, tremendous specimen of a young man. And he graduated and became a teacher. He was a coach, wrestler, went to Alaska to teach. He had the misfortune of being in a car that was hit by a train. The driver of the car received a broken leg. This young man received a broken neck and is a quadriplegic today. He has no function from the neck down. Brilliant mind, but he can't do anything. He's bedfast. Many people in a situation like that would just toss in the towel. This young man, in my opinion, is fantastic. He has the most positive attitude of anybody I know. Whenever I walk into that house, he's really upbeat. And lots of times when I walk in the house, probably a large proportion of the Peru State football team is in there. He is a great supporter of athletics at Peru State. And when you go to football games, you see a guy in a wheelchair with blankets around his shoulders and things like that. That is this young man. He can pass on his expertise as a coach and as an instructor by word of mouth, and people listen to me. My grandson's in his home. My grandson been a wrestler since he was a little guy, and at tournaments and everything, from this wheelchair come coaching comments that have turned this kid's wrestling career around. He's doing a good job. This fellow knows how to rebuild engines, auto mechanics. He's got a collection of old cars in his garage. Goes out there in his wheelchair, tells other people what to do, put the car together. He's restoring 1950s cars. And this is a person who many times would have just tossed it in because his whole life was, quote, ruined. But as it is, he's making a positive contribution, and he has a positive attitude about himself, which I think is great. And so all of our special education classes that we're going to be working with and learning about go all the way to people who have severe physical handicaps, extreme mental handicaps, learning disabilities, attention disorders, all the way up to children who have a very, very high mentality, who, sometimes blow the instructor's mind. And one of the things we have to do with these kids is find challenges. For many years, I taught, like I say, I taught special education, but for several years in the small school that I was in, I taught all of the special education, all of the remedial subjects, and all of the gifted education. And I think the reason I did this was because my husband was principal and knew that I'd taken the courses, and I had my master's in special education with a number of endorsements. He said, "Gee, you can do this." Well, I did. But the whole thing was, that was a very good learning experience for me, because it showed me how well children rely upon one another. I had a classroom, kids came to my classroom, I didn't go to their classroom, and I worked with special education students, I worked with the remedial students, I worked with gifted students. But we did a lot of the same things with all of the groups. And we did photography, we did rocketry studies, we did things like that. And if you gear them to the level of the child's understanding, this little guy down here who's having a tremendous learning problem, and that really tripped him up because, hey, I'm doing the same thing as these really smart kids do. When we did our rocket launches and things like that, all of those kids were there. They went out and watched, and they all had some kind of a part that they understood what was going on. Some not as well as others. Some were leaders, and some were followers. And that's what we've got in our world. We've got leaders and followers. But our leaders and followers have to get along with each other. We're going to get through that. I think that's necessary. Let's see, that's that out. I'm running a little bit short time. So your assignment for our next session will be to thoroughly read Chapter 1, and I want you to write down what thing in Chapter 1 surprised you the most. What did you find in that chapter that was the greatest surprise to you? I think probably you'll find a number of things that will be surprising. And I think maybe from reading this, you will find that you right now are going to be getting a little bit better understanding of just exactly what special education is. Not just where the dumb kids go. It's giving an opportunity for everyone to learn to the best of their ability. I'm trying to think if I have forgotten to hand out anything. I think I probably have just about enough things for you to worry about between now and next meeting. One of the things that I wanted to go through with you is what I expect as far as attendance is concerned. We will accept one unexcused absence. Grading, I believe in the back of the class outline, gives our grading format. And one of the things we have there is we will have a midterm test over what you have had. You'll have some chapter tests as we go along, see what you've got from each chapter. And if at the end of the semester, near the end of the semester, you have a grade that is an A, you will be excused from the final exam. I do not grade on a curve. What you earn is what you get. And if you do a good job, everybody could have an A. And you can, I think you'll find that this is kind of an interesting course because it brings out a lot of things maybe you haven't heard or seen before or thought about. And I think it may turn your thought of working with children around to a more positive attitude. A lot of people, when they go to college, say, well, I'm going to be a teacher, and then they start looking at kids and say, I don't know whether I really want to do that or not. Sometimes it gets very, very discouraging, but there's almost always